Hey, good evening, everyone. Napoleon once said that women are only good for producing children. This, of course, is a very controversial quote. However, there's context that needs to be brought in here, and that is Napoleon was originally Corsican. And the role of women in Corsican society, in order to be defined as a good wife, is producing many children. Napoleon had many brothers and sisters, and so he saw his mother as a role model in this instance. This is in stark contrast, of course, with the idea of the Republican woman in early America. Abigail Adams is going to embody that role. And Nancy Parks wrote a good short biography of Abigail Adams entitled First Lady and Woman of Intellect in the American National Biography. Abigail Adams, she's going to be born November 11th, 1744. She was actually descended from Puritan leaders, as well as successful merchants. And she's going to be self-taught. She's going to read everything from Shakespeare to Locke. She did not have a formal education, but took advantage of her family's library and spoke with others about what she read. She even read everything to Plato. She also became an avid letter writer. And this is something that is going to become very, very influential. And ultimately, she's going to leave behind a lot of evidence for historians to analyze the relationship between her and her husband, John Adams. And so it's going to be important to understand the significance in her husband's life, as well as her significance in American society, because it's not so much that we need someone, a famous female from the American Revolution, but it's more important to understand how the bond between John Adams and Abigail Adams affected the presidency and how the American public viewed that and why she is seen as a role model of a Republican woman, right? So these letters illuminate her role not just as a mother and wife, but as a mother and wife to a president, two presidents, right? So she was the wife of John Adams and then the mother of John Quincy Adams. And she did understand the importance of her role as First Lady and also establishing a Republican court in their new residence in Philadelphia. But before she was requested as First Lady to come to Philadelphia and help John Adams be his assistant, essentially, she actually managed family affairs back at their home and looked after their children. And she even wrote in a letter that labor is not like to be lower. Produce keeps up its price, particularly grain. And West India articles are 25% higher than this time last year. This is quoted in Edith Gell's Abigail Adams Writing Life on page 126. It goes to show how well she understood business and how well she could manage their home. But later on, she would later be requested to come to Philadelphia by her husband. 10 days, less than 10 days after John Adams' inauguration, he wrote to Abigail, "I cannot live without you." So she went despite her anxieties. And that's quoted in the same book on page 128. So, as I had mentioned, she establishes a court in Philadelphia, a Republican court in their residence. And she is actually going to model their residence in light of the salons and courts during the period of enlightenment. And the attire, the behavior, the attitudes that she's going to establish mimic that role. And she'll understand the focal points for shaping and wielding public opinion as a result of this. And this is cited from David Shields and Frederica Toot in the Court of Abigail Adams. And Abigail was the first lady to see that wielding her pen in private, as well as wearing upon the public evenings, her crepe dress cap, had an impact on national sentiments. Again, this is quoted in the same source. And Abigail is going to influence other political nominees. And in one specific case, one of the nominees' wife was actually very hesitant about letting her husband go to Philadelphia to serve under John Adams. So she actually wrote to her to quell these thoughts. She had said to her, "I hope you will reassume your former magnanimity, which supported you in times more perilous than the present, and under circumstances still more distressing to you, as your children were, then all young." And this is in Edith Gell's Abigail Adams writing Life on page 142. So who could fill Abigail Adams' shoes? There wasn't one other woman that could, that represented these traits, is not only a mother and a caregiver and someone that can manage their own affairs, business affairs for that matter, but also political affairs. She understood all of this. She was self-taught. If there ever was a Renaissance woman, she was the definition of that. And ultimately, I believe the reason why she has not maintained the same status as women like Betsy Ross and other mythic figures is partly has to do with the fact that we don't even quite understand or remember John Adams the same way that we've written about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. But when people begin reading about Abigail Adams or John Adams, they're going to realize that they're connected. That relationship defined that presidency. And it is with that that we will remember both Abigail Adams and John Adams. Thank you.